After her footprints were found at the scene of a brutal double homicide, 55-year-old Sherry Heffernan has been charged with the murders of her father, Jack Enders, and his girlfriend, Francois Pitois. As her trial date approaches, prosecutors get some additional evidence to help convince the jury of her guilt.
There was red staining on the door. Ultimately, on 2 of those doorknobs, the DNA did come back to Sherry Heffernan and Jack.
And that's important because when you stab somebody, the knife gets bloody, it gets slippery, your hand tends to go down, you tend to get cut.
The DNA results seemed to prove Sherry was the only person who could have committed the murders. But when the trial starts in February 2024, Sherry's lawyers insist police have arrested the wrong person.
One of the defenses was, well, she's a 50-something-year-old woman, she's not physically capable of doing this. Well, we actually showed for the jury a video of her pushing this little boat. Somebody who's not physically capable of doing things doesn't push a boat on a trailer.
Prosecutors also counter with their strong evidence, highlighting Sherry's motive.
We were able to prove at trial that
Jack changed his will. And the new will that he had created left everything to his grandson, Andrew.
Sherry, I believe that her and her dad got into an argument, and I heard that he told her that he was taking her out of his will.
I didn't know anything about wills or stuff at the time, so I didn't know who would benefit from it, but the only person that was tied to that house at the time.
Taking away from her just made her snap.
Sherry left her home in Pennsylvania shortly after midnight on September 29th, 2021. She went to Surf City and arrived at that home at 4:58 a.m. She went inside, shot both Jack Enders and Francois Pitois.
Francois is then stabbed 17 times in the bed because we do see those stab wounds through the sheets. So at that point, she gets up. We see a trail of blood from upstairs to downstairs on the steps. Jack was led downstairs. He then ends up in a chair, and that's where he's stabbed 51 times.
He had defensive wounds on the arms and hands. Nothing in the back. So she was looking at her father when she did this.
Then she stabbed my mom another 22 more times on the stairs.
Jack stabbed 51 times, Frenchie 39 times, both shot in the mouth. When the defendant was done, she didn't want to see what she did to her father. She covered him up. She didn't care about Frenchie. She just left Frenchie there.
For the jury, the evidence against Sherry is insurmountable.
They came to the same conclusion that Kristen and I did very early on. Sherry was guilty.
2 months later, at her sentencing hearing, Sherry maintains her claim of innocence.
I really wish I was the one that was killed. I was the one that was dead. I could give my life today in a heartbeat to spare them.
But the judge isn't buying it.
Judge sentenced her to 2 life terms. In specific years, she has to serve a mandatory minimum of 63 years behind bars.
I tried to make sense of it. Like, why? Like, why would somebody do that to their own parent?
It doesn't make sense. Frenchie and my grandfather definitely did not deserve anything that happened to them.
My mom lit up the room. She was beautiful inside and out. That's the best thing I can say. And if you knew her, you would love her.
At nighttime, when you go outside and you look up and you see all of the stars out there, that's how I remember both of them, Mom's and Jack.
My mom She was always caring. If you were her friend, she was your friend to the end. Jack had a big heart, and would help anybody he could. I will always be her daughter. The distance between heaven and earth will never change that.
An elderly couple is found murdered in their beachside home.
This was a very bloody crime scene. We're not talking a quick death. It was rage, it was anger.
Most of the stab wounds were to the face, neck, and front of the body.
One victim was stabbed 17 times while still in bed. Why would somebody do this?
According to loved ones, the couple didn't have an
Very idyllic retirement life.
but video evidence provides a glimpse of the killer.
That surveillance showed an individual who climbs over the picket fence.
We're all looking at this video where, what the heck happened to the car? It doesn't vanish. Where did it go?
And the investigation reveals old hostilities and shifting loyalties that put family bonds to the ultimate test.
One of the first things that you notice is a for sale sign outside.
He changed his will. And the new will left everything to his
Sunday, October 3rd, 2021. It's a peaceful fall morning along the shores of Surf City Beach, New Jersey.
Surf City is a small town on Long Beach Island. Primarily consists of part-time residents.
From Memorial Day to Labor Day, you have the summer people coming down, but during the winter months, it's very quiet.
For Valerie Lewis Evans, the daughter of a local, the quiet is worrying. Though Valerie lives in Virginia, she's been trying to get in touch with her 75-year-old mother, Francois Pitois, for several days now with no luck.
I started calling her phone. The way my mom is if she don't call you back that day, she's gonna call you definitely the next day.
Francois lives with her longtime boyfriend, Jack Enders, but neither of them are answering Valerie's calls.
The phone would go straight to answer machine. Then I keep calling and calling. So now I'm starting to get worried. My sister had called me, and I knew something was wrong, because they talk every day.
Valerie called Surf City Police Department for a welfare check.
Police went to the residence. They knocked on the front door and were not able to make contact with either of the occupants. They then walked around to the back of the residence.
The back door was locked. And when they looked in through that window, they saw what they believed to be a body sitting in a chair. They were able to use basically a tool they would use to open doors and for cars and stuff like that, and pop open the front door.
Before even entering the residence, you start to get that odor of decomposition. As you continue into the house, it obviously becomes more pungent.
There is someone found in a chair. He's covered in clothing. It's pretty apparent that he is deceased. He's been stabbed multiple times.
Based on the physical description of Jack Enders, they were able to make a very educated guess that it was him.
Even for seasoned officers, the crime scene is gruesome. And farther inside the home, they find a second victim.
Evidence at the base of the stairs was the body of Francois.
It's immediately apparent that I mean, there's blood everywhere, that she's been stabbed all over.
They immediately called for CSI and homicide squad.
When I arrive on scene, we conduct an initial walkthrough. We notice blood on the floor in the kitchen. As you step past or over Francois's body and head up the stairs, you see blood swiping down the stairs all the way up into the second floor, and that trail can be followed into the bedroom.
They found 17 what appeared to be slice marks going through the sheet, which we assumed Francois was stabbed 17 times while still in bed, before she even got out.
2 9mm casings were found among the bedding.
This was a very bloody crime scene. There was blood, a lot of blood in that bedroom. There was blood going all the way down the stairwell. There were bloody footprints going out of the house.
What this scene was telling us is that the initial encounter was upstairs while Jack and Francois were still in bed. And as it was escalating or continuing, then came downstairs.
As CSI is processing the crime scene, the local police department go to every door in the area and they knock on the door. Say, hey, do you know these people who live here?
We needed to get a little bit more background information on the people that are inside of the house and start to get the biggest idea of who could have done this and why this happened.
Francois Pitois was born in France in December 1945.
My mom was from Great France. My mom was very a beautiful person, and she was very loving and kind.
Beacon of light.
They met and they hit it off.
They started courting, and eventually they got married. And then they had me.
They went to Germany, and then they had me, and then we wound up in New Jersey. She became a nurse, and she always took care of people. She made sure, like, their room, everything was nice and neat. Always giving and helping out people.
16 years into the marriage, Francois and her husband decided to part ways.
They ended up getting a divorce, but they stayed very admirable with each other.
All the kids were grown. She was still doing nursing, and she got her own place in Browns Mills, New Jersey.
Francois spent over 20 years working in a New Jersey nursing home, but never lost her accent. Patients gave her the affectionate nickname, Frenchie.
And I think it was 2001. She had a friend that she wanted me to meet, and that's when Jack came into the picture. My mom was hanging out at the beach, and a mutual friend introduced them.
Jack Enders was a retired businessman living on the shore.
He had been in the Air Force. He went to Penn State, and he, for many years, ran a very successful construction and building business in the Philadelphia area. Jack was a grandfather. He had 2 adult daughters from his marriage to his lifelong sweetheart.
Jack had a wife that passed away from Alzheimer's, and my mom, dealing with patients and taking care of people, she knew about that stuff, and they just clicked. My mom was short, about 5'1", little petite French lady, and Jack was a tall, giant guy. They just got along perfect, and they made each other glow, you know what I mean?
Francois had her own home, but she spent a lot of her time in that house in Surf City.
We go there for summer, 4th of July a lot. I remember seeing fireworks there with them, and we'd all stay at the house.
They would always cook like all of this seafood for us.
They've been together about 15 years, like just some very idyllic retirement life.
By 2021, Jack and Francois were looking for a change.
Jack wanted to sell the house because they were getting older. And I think he just wanted to get something smaller, maybe one level. His brother and his wife already, moved to Florida, so that was the plan.
But the couple would never get to make their move south a reality. Jack and Francois have become victims of a brutal crime. And New Jersey investigators are determined to find out who is responsible.
One of the first things that you notice is a for sale sign outside. It's the end of September, so again, it's a time where Surf City is largely uninhabited. Is this something where someone took an opportunity to go in and see what they could find, and that they happened to encounter these two individuals?
But there was cash found in the house. That goes against the idea that this was a robbery.
The wounds suffered by the two victims suggest a different motive.
Most of the stab wounds were to the face, neck, and front of the body. She had also stab wounds to her back, as well as a slashing wound across her throat.
So we're not talking once or twice. We're not talking a quick death. For me, it was rage. It was anger. This wasn't business. This wasn't a robbery. This was personal.
Coming up, investigators discover their victims were embroiled in a family feud.
The relationship broke up. They just cut him off completely.
And a suspect is caught on camera.
We were able to actually see what I would call almost like a ghostly figure go by.
Surf City detectives are investigating the brutal murders of Francois Petois and Jack Enders, an elderly couple found stabbed to death in their waterfront home.
The first thought is, who could have done something like this? You start to notice different things about this scene.
Jack Enders was found with clothing covering his face and body. Frenchie was not. He was stabbed in the chair. That's where those injuries were inflicted. Frenchie was stabbed in bed.
We find in these investigations that when it's, someone that is close to someone after they commit these crimes, sometimes they cover them with clothing that they can't, see what they've done.
What that tells us is that whoever committed this act had a closer connection to Jack.
Crime scene technicians comb through the house for further clues.
Once the initial police had responded, our crime scene investigation unit was called.
Directly at the top of the stairs was a bathroom, and in that bathroom there was blood on the sink.
There was some blood on the counter. There was a towel. So it looks like whoever did this washed up in the guest bathroom.
Samples of blood are collected from surfaces the killer might have touched, along with any prints they left behind.
On the kitchen floor, we do see what appears to be footprints and blood.
We used a chemical called amido black to process the scene, and there were multiple latent impressions that were found. The first thing that we would want to do is take elimination prints from both our female and our male victim. I was then able to compare both of their feet to the print that was lifted at the scene and exclude both our female victim as well as our male victim. There is no database at this time that houses foot impressions. We would have to develop a suspect first, so then we can then obtain that suspect's footprints.
By now, 4 hours have passed since Francois's family requested a welfare check, and her daughter Valerie is beginning to fear the worst.
Nobody's calling me back. My daughter lives in Willingboro, New Jersey. So I called my daughter. I said, Noonie, I'm going to send you the address to Jack. I want you to go over there and see what's going on.
While down at the scene, I was approached by a Surf City patrolman who advised that there was a female that was looking to speak with a detective assigned to the case.
My daughter called me on FaceTime. I told my daughter to hold up the phone so that I could see the house. And she does. And I tell the police officer, that's Jack's truck. My mom doesn't drive no more. If they go anywhere, they're gonna take Jack's truck. So where are they?
It's tricky at times. We knew who the people were inside the house, but we needed to identify them in a medically appropriate manner before notifying them, the family members, of the death.
I asked Noonie if she minded if we go back to headquarters to do a formal sit down and interview her, which she agreed to.
At the Surf City police station, Valerie's daughter tells detectives everything she knows.
We try to get a little information on the family dynamic, keeping that in mind, that whoever committed this act may have had a closer connection to Jack. And we learned that Jack has 2 daughters, both of which are in Pennsylvania.
According to Noonie, Jack and his daughters, Sherry and Terry, had become estranged over the years.
Both his daughters weren't talking to him, and he's just like, I don't know what happened. He felt bad because he didn't know why.
The relationship between him and Terry broke up because of her and her husband's relationship. They cut him off, just cut him off completely.
The falling out with Sherry was the result of multiple events, including an apparent betrayal of Francois.
Any holidays, my mom would send cards, and she sends Sherry a card with $200. So she calls me up, and she's crying and everything, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? She said Sherry took the $200 check and changed it into a $2,000 check. That never came of it because Jack wound up, paying my mom back for that check. But this threw their relationship apart.
We try not to be too influenced when somebody says, oh, this person hated them or they hated each other. People's opinions, people's positions, things of that nature are just not relevant. What's relevant is the evidence.
At this point, what we don't have is something concrete that says this was Sherry Heffernan. And when you're dealing with something as heinous as a double murder, you want to make sure that you get it right.
After interviewing the granddaughter of Francois Petois, detectives have their first lead on who her killer might be. Jack Ender's 55-year-old daughter, Sherry Heffernan.
While Jack has 2 daughters, Terry has been estranged from the family for a number of years. The other daughter, Sherry, still has ties to Jack, but as of late had been having a falling out with him.
Sherry and her dad were having a difficult time. But we want to make sure the evidence dictates where we go with our investigation. We talked to everybody in this case. Any friends we can find, any family members, just to build a bio on these people.
Sherry was the youngest of 2. My mother was the older one.
Sherry had 1 son. She was divorced. She had worked as a real estate agent. I believe she had done some financial work. Her and her dad had been business partners, it appeared, over the years with different ventures.
Jack had been trying to sell this house for quite some time now. In fact, he had listed it at least once before and used his daughter Sherry as the listing agent because she was a realtor.
She was in charge of doing it, but it never got sold, and I think my grandfather got frustrated by that.
Frustrated enough that he hired a different agent to handle the sale. A decision that upset Sherry.
She wanted to be the one to sell it.
As investigators take a closer look at Sherry, on October 4th, the medical examiner officially confirms the couple's identities and the family is notified.
I answered the door, and the police officer said that they're gone. They're no longer here. And I just immediately started crying.
While the family processes the news, investigators look to the autopsy for more answers.
The autopsy revealed that Francois was stabbed 39 times, all over her back and her neck. Jack had been stabbed 51 times.
Both sides of his jaw were broken, but it wasn't until the autopsy of Francois that they noted the clear bullet hole through her jaw, which then made him take Jack back out. And when they reconstructed his jaw, they could clearly see it was a bullet.
The forensic pathologist was able to determine the gunshot wounds were from a close distance.
From that point, we believe that Jack was led down the stairs at gunpoint after being shot in the face and led to that chair where he was ultimately found.
Most of his stab and slash wounds were in the front, as well as his arms, as he was trying to defend himself at that point, sitting in the chair.
While whoever is committing this crime is inflicting these stab wounds now upon Jack, we believe that Francois actually survived and made her way down the stairs.
Whoever did this could have shot him in the temple. That would have been fatal. But this was somebody who was angry with these people and wanted them to know that they were angry with them.
The autopsy findings also reveal a timeline for the murder.
The bodies were what I would call in the early stages of decomposition, which indicated to us we couldn't just look at October 3rd. Even October 2nd, we had to go back as far as we could.
Officers made me aware of a video that existed that was recorded from a neighboring residence's surveillance system.
When our detectives reviewed it, we found that on September 29th, a surveillance camera was able to pick up a white Winnebago.
We see the vehicle drive down North 7th Street in the direction of the victim's home shortly before 5 a.m.
We see this vehicle pull up, park. Approximately an hour later, we see the vehicle moving. The lights are turned off at one point.
As we continue to watch the surveillance, that vehicle leaves that area approximately 50 minutes later at approximately 5:50 a.m. And an individual is seen a short time later walking back towards the victim residence.
And we were able to actually see what I would call almost like a ghostly figure go by. I mean, this is 5 a.m. in the morning. It's dark.
After a brief search, detectives find another security camera, and it provides a better view of their suspect leaving the victim's house 2 hours later.
That surveillance showed an individual who goes over to the bay, climbs over the white little picket fence there, goes over into the neighbor's yard, and begins walking away. That individual had a hood up, appeared to be wearing clothing and shoes that were just too big for them, carrying, something yellow in their hand. And we do find blood, Francois' blood, on that fence.
Looking at the height of the fence, they appeared to be about 5'8", 5'9", 5'7", somewhere in there. We believe that this person was most likely our murder suspect.
I wasn't gonna quit until we found out who it was, and they were in jail for the rest of their lives.
Hours into the investigation of Jack Enders and Francois Petois' violent deaths, detectives have caught a glimpse of the killer. But whoever it is took extra precautions not to be recognized.
It appeared that this person who committed the murders took Jack's clothes and wore them out of the house. And that's why the clothes appeared to be so big on them.
We do not know at this point whether it's a male or a female. All that we're able to tell is whoever did this is approximately 5'8". We also know that the person that committed this act arrived in the Winnebago.
Now we know more between the hours of, say, 3:45 in the morning till after 7 o'clock in the morning on the 29th. Can't pull every surveillance camera on the island, but it's a barrier island. You're going over a bridge to get there. There's one way in and one way out.
That bridge has cameras, so we start looking at this camera, the eastbound camera, coming onto Long Beach Island.
Sure enough, we see the Winnebago come over the bridge. But then we don't see it get to the other side. So we're all looking at this video where, what the heck happened to the car? It's a Winnebago, it doesn't vanish. Where did it go?
That vehicle, as we continue to watch the surveillance, leaves that area around 7 a.m., headed westbound.
Investigators aren't able to make out a license plate from the footage. But if their suspicions about the killer are correct, they don't need one to locate the vehicle.
I searched for Sherry and was able to find an old license for Sherry with Sherry Enders as the name. Using that driver's license, I was able to locate a New Jersey registration. And that New Jersey registration came back to a 2003 Winnebago.
While it doesn't prove Sherry was the one who committed the murders, her connection to the RV makes it imperative that detectives find her and bring her in for questioning.
Authorities find that Sherry lives outside of Philadelphia, and they contact the Pennsylvania State Police.
Pennsylvania State Police drive by the residence and let us know that the Winnebago is parked in the driveway of that residence.
While Pennsylvania police set up surveillance at Sherry's home, New Jersey detectives travel to meet them.
We meet up with the Pennsylvania State Police, who says there hasn't been anyone coming or going from the house, but there is a truck parked in the house. A short while after arriving, that truck leaves the residence. We ask Pennsylvania State Police to follow the vehicle, and Pennsylvania conducts that motor vehicle stop. They're able to identify the driver as J.J. Hefernan, who is the son of Sherry Hefernan. From that point, JJ is asked to come down and has to provide a taped statement to speak about the family dynamic. While we're speaking with JJ, the officers that were conducting surveillance on Sherry's home have now decided to move forward.
Yeah, we located a active warrant for Sherry Hefernan out of Norristown, Pennsylvania.
So they approach the house and they call her out on a PA system under the strength of an unrelated warrant.
She did come out when she was ordered to, and she was arrested.
News of Sherry's arrest sends shockwaves through the families of Jack and Francois.
I was surprised at first when they were going to investigate her. I thought they were close. What would her reasons be?
And what kind of daughter does that to her own dad? She had that much hatred for her dad and my mom? They didn't do nothing.
Coming up, investigators obtain a warrant for Sherry's property.
We found ammunition that was the same as the shell casings found at the scene. And we had her Winnebago on video surveillance.
And the killer's true motive becomes clear.
I heard that he told her that he was taking her out of his will.
Having all that taken away from her just made her snap.
After connecting Sherry Heffernan to the murder of her father and his girlfriend, detectives arrest Sherry and bring her 22-year-old son JJ in for questioning.
We ultimately were able to rule her son out as a suspect through his phone records, which placed him in Maryland at the time these crimes were committed.
Sherry's son was also about 6'2", 6'3". The person in this picture is about 5'8", and a slender build. Nobody in the families matched that description except for Sherry.
And JJ can't rule out the possibility that it was his mother.
He provides us with limited information, but important information. Specifically that Sherry Heffernan owns and operates a Winnebago.
Also, he explains some of the family dynamic, that he and Sherry believe that Francois is a gold digger and that they blame her for their grandfather wanting to sell the house.
After gaining more insight from JJ's interview, investigators turn their attention to Sherry.
She's placed in an interview room. She has read her rights, at which point she invokes her right to have an attorney present.
She does not give a statement. However, the officers are able to collect a DNA swab from her. We get a search warrant for that Winnebago and for her residence, just to see again if we can find some evidence connecting her or someone else to this crime.
When that warrant is executed, this Winnebago that has been the vehicle of interest in this case, we were able to see some red staining almost immediately in the driver's compartment of that vehicle.
As the vehicle is transported back to New Jersey for further analysis, investigators focus on Sherry's residence.
When we searched Sherry's house, we found ammunition that was the same as the shell casings found at the scene, and we found a receipt for a gun. It was a receipt for a 9mm. Turned out to be the same type of gun most likely used to inflict these injuries. Every other gun she had lawfully purchased, we found in that house. We didn't find that one.
During the execution of the search warrant, we also noticed a surveillance system that is on the outside of the residence.
While investigators pull the footage, they also obtain a warrant for Sherry's cell phone.
The cell phone was very important. We were able to map it.
We're able to see that she leaves her residence at sometime after midnight, near the 1 o'clock hour on September 29th.
Driving all the way up to the Pennsylvania Turnpike Bridge, she crosses the Delaware there, then comes all the way down to basically Route 72 eventually, which is the main artery going through Manahawkin into Long Beach Island, and crosses the bridge. And this became important because we had her Winnebago on video surveillance going over this bridge. We were able to show that she actually turned when she got over the bridge early. We talked to the local police and they said, yeah, that's a shortcut known by locals. It avoids a couple lights.
She arrives at Jack and Francois' residence at approximately 4:58 a.m., and her cell phone is turned off a short while later.
We have nothing else on that phone until it starts being used again at around 9 a.m. in Pennsylvania. So it appears she got to the scene and turned her phone off.
We're able to then track her back into Landenberg, ultimately until she arrives at her home right in the evening hours of September 29th.
And when investigators access the home's surveillance footage, they notice something about Sherry.
While looking through that footage, I saw Sherry Heffernan returning home that day on the 29th. I believe it was 7:53 p.m., if I remember correctly. She later goes back to the Winnebago and removes some items that look very similar to what she was seen carrying when she left the residence in Surf City.
And one of the things we were able to see is she was barefoot. And it was important because there were bloody footprints going out the front door at the crime scene.
Once Miss Heffernan was arrested, I was then able to go and obtain her foot impressions. And I was able to then confirm that, in fact, the bloody foot impressions were Miss Heffernan's. At that point, I had no doubt in my mind that we had the right person.
Now we have to prove this defendant's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Why would a daughter kill her father and his girlfriend in such a brutal way? Why would this person do this?
It begins with a detail so small it should have meant nothing. A window, cracked open just enough to lend the cold. At 2:17 a.m., on a wind-bitten night in November 1998, in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, the temperature had dropped below freezing. Frost clung to the grass. Streetlights hummed faintly over empty roads. Nothing moved. Nothing stirred. And yet, somewhere in that stillness, something happened, something no one would fully understand for more than 20 years. By morning, she was gone. Emily Carter, 17 years old, honor roll student. No record of trouble, no late-night rebellions, no history of running away. The kind of girl who followed routines so precisely that her absence didn't just alarm, it disrupted. Her mother was the first to notice. 6:52 a.m. The alarm clock had already rung twice. Emily never slept through alarms. Never. The door was closed, just like always. The house was quiet, ordinary. But when the door opened, the world shifted. The bed was empty. Not unmade. Not disturbed in any obvious way. The blankets were pulled back, as if she had gotten up on her own. But she wasn't in the bathroom. Not in the kitchen. Not anywhere. And then the window. Open. Just slightly. Police arrived within minutes of a 911 call. At first glance, nothing screamed violence. No broken locks. No shattered glass. No overturned furniture. The front door was still locked from the inside. The back door, too. But inside the room, something felt off. Her backpack was still hanging from the chair. School books neatly stacked. Her phone, an outdated flip model, sat on a nightstand, plugged in, fully charged. Her sneakers were by the closet, laces tied. Her wallet untouched. But her jacket was missing. A thin gray hoodie. Not nearly enough for the cold outside. Detectives circled the same question from the very first hour. Why would she leave like this? No coat. No phone. No bag. Unless she didn't plan to go far. Or didn't plan to leave at all. The window became the center of everything. No fingerprints. No smudges. No damage. The frame was clean. Too clean. The ground below told no story either. The frost should have preserved footprints, impressions, something. But there was nothing. No entry. No exit. It was as if she had simply disappeared. By noon, the neighborhood was sealed. Patrol cars lined the street. Officers moved door to door, knocking, asking, pressing. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones. Curtains stayed half-drawn. Fear spread quickly, not loud but heavy. Because this wasn't supposed to happen here. A retired man, living 2 houses down, offered the only unusual detail. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. Just headlights. A vehicle moving slowly. Not parked. Not passing through. Just creeping along the street sometime after 2 a.m. He couldn't describe it. Couldn't recall the color, the make, the sound. Only that it didn't belong. It was the kind of detail investigators cling to when there's nothing else. And in this case, there's almost nothing. Search teams were deployed before sunset. Volunteers combed through wooded areas behind the neighborhood. Fields, drainage ditches, abandoned lots. Every inch was scanned, then scanned again. Nothing. No clothing. No trace. No Emily. Within 48 hours, the media picked it up. Local headlines turned national. Teen girl vanishes without a trace. Suburban nightmare shocks Ohio community. Cold case feared as leads dry up. The phrase came early. Cold case. It clung to the investigation like a warning. Days passed, then weeks. Leads came in, tips from strangers, sightings from distant towns, theories from people desperate to make sense of something senseless. Each one followed. Each one collapsed. Friends were questioned. Classmates interviewed. Teachers, neighbors, distant acquaintances. No one was left untouched by the investigation. Everyone had something to say, but no one had anything that mattered. No argument. No secret relationship. No known threats. Emily Carter, by every measurable standard, had no reason to vanish, which made the silence louder. Detectives began to consider the possibilities no one wanted to say out loud. Abduction. Planned. Targeted. Someone had watched. Waited. Known a routine. But how? No forced entry. No signs of struggle. No evidence left behind. Unless she had opened that window herself. That theory shifted everything. If she let someone in, it wasn't a stranger. It was someone she trusted. Someone familiar enough to approach her house in the middle of the night and not raise suspicion. The suspect pool narrowed instantly. But even then, nothing stuck. Among the names reviewed was Jason Miller. Same school. Same grade. Quiet, unremarkable. He had been interviewed early in the investigation, like everyone else. He reported being home all night. His parents confirmed it. No inconsistencies. No red flags. He was cleared. At least on paper. The case stretched into months. Then years. Flyers faded under sun and rain. Yellow ribbons tied to trees became brittle, then disappeared. The neighborhood slowly returned to routine, but something underneath never settled. Parents became stricter. Lights stayed on longer. Windows were locked more carefully. But fear doesn't fade. It just changes shape. In 2003, 5 years after Emily vanished, a lead surfaced that reignited everything. A gas station clerk in another state reported seeing a girl who looked like her. The timeline barely fit, but barely was enough. Surveillance footage was recovered. Grainy, distorted. A figure in a hoodie, head down, standing near the counter. The resemblance was enough to create hope. Investigators enhanced the footage, slowed it down, stabilized frames. For days, it was all anyone talked about. Could she still be alive? But hope, in cases like this, is fragile. The height didn't match exactly. The posture felt different. The way the figure walked, subtle but wrong. Experts reviewed it again and again. Conclusion, inconclusive, which in reality meant no. The lead died quietly. The case returned to silence. By 2008, something else surfaced, something darker. A construction site miles away unearthed human remains. Fragmented, buried deep. For a moment, the worst fear resurfaced. Could it be her? Forensic teams worked for months. The answer came back cold. Not Emily. Another victim. Another story. Another family shattered. And still, Emily Carter remained missing. No body. No suspect. No resolution. By 2015, the case had become a file. Thick, archived, untouched for long stretches of time. A cold case in the truest sense. Not forgotten, but frozen. Except by one person. Detective Mark Halpern. He had been a teenager when Emily disappeared. Old enough to remember the fear. The headlines. The way the town changed overnight. Years later, when he joined the department, the case stayed with him. It didn't make sense. And cases that don't make sense don't let go. He reopened the file. Read everything. Listened to every recorded interview. Studied photographs of the room, the window, the bed. And one thing kept pulling him back. The absence of evidence. Not just lack of clues, but lack of mistakes. Whoever had been there left nothing. No fingerprints. No fibers. No DNA. In 1998, That might have been luck. But Halpern didn't believe in that kind of luck. He believed in control, which meant the person responsible wasn't impulsive. They were careful, deliberate, possibly even patient. He revisited old interviews, comparing transcripts from years apart. Most people change their stories slightly over time. Small inconsistencies, forgotten details. But one interview didn't change at all. Jason Miller, word for word, his alibi held perfectly across years. Too perfectly. It wasn't proof, but it wasn't normal. Halpern flagged it. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, the case shifted just slightly out of the shadows. Because sometimes the smallest detail, the one that seems meaningless, is the one that breaks everything open. The first crack didn't come from a confession. It came from silence that lasted just a little too long. Jason Miller sat across the table, hands folded, posture calm, eyes steady, but not quite steady enough. Detective Mark Halpern had seen it before. Not panic, not guilt in the obvious sense. Something subtler, a hesitation buried beneath years of practice. Because that's what it was now. Practice. 2 decades of telling the same story, the same timeline, the same calm, uneventful night in November 1998. I was home, Jason said again, voice even. Watched TV. Went to bed around midnight. That's it. Halpern didn't interrupt. Didn't challenge. He just let the silence sit, stretching it out, letting it press against the edges of the room. Most people rush to fill silence. Jason didn't, which made it worse. Your parents confirmed that, Halpern said finally, flipping through a worn folder, though he already knew every word inside it. Multiple times. Same wording. Same sequence. Jason nodded once. No emotion. They were telling the truth. Maybe, Halpern replied. Or maybe they were repeating what you told them. A pause. Not long, but long enough. Outside the room, the observation team exchanged glances. Tiny movements, barely noticeable shifts in posture. The kind of reactions that don't mean anything on their own. But in a case like this, after 22 years, everything meant something. Halpern leaned forward slightly. Do you remember Emily's window? It was an odd question. Deliberately so. Jason blinked once. Slow. No. 2nd floor. Facing the street. Slightly open that night. Jason shrugged. I don't remember. But Halpern saw it. Not in his words. In the timing. The fraction of a second where memory and instinct collided. And something had to be chosen. Denial came too quickly. Too clean. Strange, Halpern said quietly. Because most people who knew her remember that window. It became a detail. Something people talked about. Wondered about. Jason didn't respond. The silence returned. This time, heavier. Because now it wasn't just empty. It was occupied. Halpern changed direction. Did you ever go to her house? No. Another answer. Immediate. Too immediate. Not once. No. Halpern nodded slowly, as if accepting it, as if moving on. But he didn't. Instead, he reached into the folder and slid a photograph across the table. A yearbook image. Emily Carter, smiling, frozen in a moment that would outlive her. Jason looked at it, and for the first time, something real flickered. Not grief. Not shock. Recognition layered with something else. Something tighter. You went to the same school, Halpern said. Same classes. Same hallway. Jason's jaw shifted slightly. We didn't talk. Did she know you? I don't know. The answer wasn't wrong, but it wasn't right either. And Halpern knew the difference. Because truth, when it's real, tends to land heavier. This one floated. Let's try something else, Halpern said, voice calm, almost casual. In 1998, we didn't have what we have now. Jason didn't react. We didn't have the kind of DNA analysis that can pull a profile from almost nothing. A single fiber. A fragment. Something missed the first time. Still nothing. But the air shifted. Barely. You understand that, right? Jason nodded once. Halpern leaned back, watching him. Good. Because we found something. And there it was. The moment. The pivot point where the past and present collide. Jason's fingers tightened, just slightly, against each other. Not enough for most people to notice. Enough for Halpern. A piece of fabric Halpern continued. Recovered from Emily's bedsheet. Overlooked for years. Too small to matter back then. Jason said nothing, but his breathing changed. Slower, controlled, deliberate. As technology improved, we tested it again, Halpern said. And this time it gave us something. Silence. Not empty. Waiting. A partial DNA profile. Jason's eyes dropped for a fraction of a second, then came back up. Too late. Halpern saw it. You ever submitted your DNA, Jason? He asked. No. Any reason you would be in the system? No. Family members? A pause. There was again. Not long, but real. My brother, Jason said finally. He had a DUI. Years ago. Halpern nodded slowly. Yes, he did. The room felt smaller now. Tighter. Because the distance between speculation and certainty was collapsing. We ran the profile, Halpern said. Didn't get a direct match. Jason held his gaze. But something underneath it had changed. Got a familial hit instead. And just like that, the foundation cracked. Not shattered. Not yet. But fractured enough that everything built on top of it started to shift. Jason didn't speak. Didn't move. But the silence now wasn't controlled. It was defensive. Which means, Halpern continued, voice steady, whoever left that DNA is related to someone already in the system. Jason's jaw tightened. Statistically, Halpern went on, that narrows things down. A lot. Another pause. Longer this time. Because now there was nowhere left to step back to. No version of the story that didn't touch the evidence. We built the tree, Halpern said quietly. Mapped it out. Names, connections, timelines. Jason's eyes flickered. Just once. But enough. And you were right in the middle of it. The words landed. Heavy. Final. Jason leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. Not a denial. Not yet. Just space. Time. Because after 22 years, even the strongest story begins to crack under the weight of reality. You don't have anything, Jason said finally. The first pushback. Soft. Measured. But different. Because it wasn't certainty. It was resistance. Halpern didn't react. Didn't argue. He just reached into the folder again. Another photograph. This one older. Faded. A shot from inside Emily's room. The bed. The window. And something else. Something small. Circled in red. You see that? Halpern asked. Jason didn't answer. 1998, Halpern continued. We missed it. Everyone did. He slid the photo closer. Jason looked. And this time, the reaction wasn't subtle. It was immediate. A flicker of recognition that came too fast to hide. Because the circled detail wasn't random. It was specific. A mark. Faint. Barely visible. On the window frame. Not a fingerprint, Halpern said. Not exactly. More like pressure. Repeated contact. From the same spot. Jason's breathing shifted again. Faster now. Despite the effort to control it. Left by someone who knew where to push, Halpern said. How to open it quietly. Without damage. Silence. But this time, it wasn't holding. It was breaking. Because memory doesn't stay buried forever. Not when it's pulled back into the light. You've been in that room, Halpern said. Not a question. A statement. Jason shook his head. But it came too late. Too weak. Before that night, Halpern added. More than once. No, Jason said, sharper now. But the word lacked weight. Lacked certainty. Because the story, the perfect rehearsed story, was collapsing under details it was never built to withstand. You didn't break in, Halpern said. You didn't have to. Jason's hands unclasped now. Restless. No longer controlled. She let you in. The room went still. Completely still. Because sometimes the truth isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It just needs to be said at the right moment. And this was it. Jason stared at the table. Not at Halpern. Not at the photos. Somewhere else. Somewhere further back. 1998. That night. 2:17 a.m. The cold. The window. The silence. You don't know that, Jason said finally. But his voice was different now. Lower. Thinner. Because denial, once cracked, never sounds the same again. Halpern didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to, because the shift had already happened. The story was no longer intact. And once that happens, it never goes back. Not completely. We collected a sample, Halpern said after a moment. Recently, Jason didn't move. A coffee cup, discarded. A beat, ran it against the profile. Another beat, longer. This was it. The edge, where everything changes. It's a match. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to, because in that room, in that moment, they were louder than anything else that had been said in 22 years. Jason closed his eyes, just for a second, but it was enough, because people don't close their eyes when they're innocent. They close them when something inside finally gives way. And when he opened them again, the silence was gone, replaced by something heavier, something irreversible. And for the first time since 1998, the truth was no longer buried. It was right there, waiting. Jason Miller doesn't confess. Not at first. The word match still hangs in the air, heavy, unmoving, like something the room itself refuses to absorb. For a few seconds, nothing happens. No outburst, no denial, no sudden collapse into guilt. Just a man sitting across a metal table, staring at nothing, as if the past has finally caught up, but hasn't decided what to do with him yet. Detective Mark Halpern doesn't push. Not immediately, because this is the moment where pressure breaks things or hardens them forever. Jason exhales slowly, eyes drifting down to his hands, then back up again. There's a change now, subtle but undeniable. The precision is gone. The rehearsed calm, the exact timing of responses, the perfect rhythm of denial. It's slipping. You said a fragment, Jason mutters, almost to himself. A piece of fabric. Halpern nods once. That's right. Jason lets out a short breath. Not quite a laugh. Not quite disbelief. That's all it took. It isn't a question. It's something closer to realization. And realization, in cases like this, is dangerous. Because it opens doors that have been sealed for decades. You want to tell me how it got there? Halpern asks quietly. Jason doesn't answer. His eyes shift again, not toward the detective, not toward the evidence, but somewhere else entirely. Somewhere behind it all. Somewhere older. 1998. The room. The window. The cold. I didn't plan it, Jason says suddenly. The first crack. Not a confession. But not denial either. Halpern doesn't move. Doesn't interrupt. Just lets the words sit. Because now, they're coming. Slow. Uncertain. But real. I didn't go there thinking. Jason trails off, shaking his head slightly. It wasn't like that. Halpern leans forward just a fraction. Then what was it like? Jason swallows. The silence stretches again, but this time it's different. It isn't resistance. It's construction. A mind trying to rebuild something that's been buried too long. I knew her, Jason says finally. The statement lands with a weight the earlier ones never had. Not like you think, he adds quickly. We didn't date. We didn't even really talk much at school. Halpern says nothing. Because qualifiers don't erase facts. They just complicate them. Jason's hands tighten again, fingers pressing into each other. But I knew her, he repeats, quieter now. We had moments. Moments. The word hangs there, vague, undefined, dangerous. What kind of moments? Halpern asks. Jason hesitates, then looks up. For a while, she'd leave her window open. Halpern doesn't react outwardly. But inside, everything locks into place. The window. Not random. Not staged. Intentional. She couldn't sleep, Jason continues. She told me that once. Said the air helped. That it felt less closed in. How did she tell you? Halpern asks. Jason's gaze flickers again. And for the first time, there's something close to shame. I messaged her, he says. Online. Late at night. We talk sometimes. This wasn't in the original file. Not once. No records. No transcripts. No mention. Which means one thing. It was hidden. How long? Halpern asks. A few months, Jason replies. Maybe longer. It wasn't constant. Just sometimes. Late-night conversations. Private. Unseen. The kind of connection that exists in shadows. Real, but invisible to everyone else. She knew it was you? Halpern asks. Jason nods. Yeah. No hesitation this time. Because that part, at least, is true. And she let you come over? Another pause. But shorter. Yes. The word changes everything. Because now, the narrative shifts completely. No forced entry. No stranger. No abduction in the traditional sense. This wasn't a break-in. It was an invitation. At night. Halpern presses. Jason nods again. A couple of times. Not many. How did you get in? The window. Of course. Always the window. And out. The same way. Halpern leans back slightly, absorbing it. Because this isn't just a detail. It's a rewrite. Everything the investigation believed in 1998, the fear, the randomness, the unknown threat, it all collapses under this one truth. She knew him. She let him in. Tell me about that night, Halpern says. Jason doesn't respond immediately. His breathing slows again, but not into control, into something else, something heavier. Memory. I wasn't supposed to go, he says finally. It wasn't planned, not like before. Then why did you? Jason closes his eyes for a second. She messaged me. Halpern's focus sharpens. What did she say? Jason exhales slowly. Just, are you awake? The simplest message. The kind that means nothing until it means everything. And you went? Halpern says. Jason nods. Yeah. What time? Late. After 2. 2:17 a.m. The sound. The headlights. The cold. Everything begins to align. I walked, Jason continues. Didn't take a car. Didn't want anyone to see. How far? 10 minutes. Close. Closer than anyone realized. And the lights. Halpern asks suddenly. Jason looks up. What? Headlights. A car seen on the street around that time. Jason shakes his head. Wasn't me. Halpern watches him. This time the denial holds. Solid. Which means the car. Was someone else. A new thread. A new unknown. But not now. Not yet. Keep going, Halpern says. Jason nods slightly. I got there. The window was open. Like always. Always. A routine. A pattern. Something predictable. I climbed in, he says. Quiet. She was awake. What happened next? Jason's jaw tightens. We talked. About what? I don't remember. Halpern doesn't believe that. And Jason knows it. I mean, nothing important, he corrects quickly. Just normal stuff. But nothing about that night was normal. And they both know it. How long were you there? Halpern asks. Jason hesitates. I don't know. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe more. And then the question hangs. Because this is where everything changes. Where conversation becomes something else. Where memory fractures. Jason's fingers twitch against the table. She said she was tired, he mutters. That I should go. And did you? A pause. Longer this time. Heavy. No. The word lands harder than anything else he's said. Because now the shift is complete. Not just presence. Not just access. Choice. I didn't want to leave, Jason says, voice lower now. Not yet. Why? Jason doesn't answer right away. Because the answer matters. Not legally, but psychologically. And that's where the truth always lives. I thought he starts, then stops. Thought what? Halpern presses. Jason shakes his head. It doesn't matter. It does. Another pause. Then, I thought she liked me. The room goes quiet again. But not the same quiet. This one is sharper. Colder. Because now, motive begins to take shape. Not anger. Not revenge. Something more fragile. And more dangerous. She did like you. Halpern says carefully. She let you in. Jason nods. Yeah, but not like that. There it is. The fracture line. Between perception and reality. What happened, Jason? Halpern asks. Jason's eyes drop again. To the table. To his hands. To somewhere he doesn't want to go. We argued, he says finally. The first real escalation. About what? Jason exhales. I don't even remember how it started. Something stupid. Something small. But small things in the wrong moment become everything. She told me to leave again, he continues. Said I shouldn't have come. That it was a mistake. And Jason's voice tightens. I got mad. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just honest. How mad? Jason doesn't answer. Because the answer isn't something that fits into words easily. It wasn't supposed to. He begins, then stops again. Halpern leans forward slightly. Wasn't supposed to what? Jason's hands tremble now. Just a little. But enough. It wasn't supposed to go that far. The sentence hangs there. Incomplete, but clear. Because now, the truth isn't hiding anymore. It's just unfolding. Slowly. Reluctantly. Inevitably. Halpern doesn't rush it. Because this is the moment where the past stops being a story and becomes a memory again. What did you do? He asks quietly. Jason doesn't look up. Doesn't move. For a long time, there's nothing. No words. No sound. Just the weight of everything that's been buried for 22 years pressing down at once. And then, finally, I grabbed her. The words are barely audible, but they change everything. Because now, there's no going back. No version of the story that ends clean. No explanation that erases what comes next. Just the truth. Waiting. To be told. I grabbed her. The words don't echo. They don't need to. They settle into the room like something heavy dropped into still water, sending ripples through everything that follows. Detective Mark Halpern doesn't react outwardly, but inside, the case shifts again. This time not as a theory, not as a reconstruction, but as something closer to truth. Jason Miller keeps his eyes down, fixed on his hands as if they belong to someone else. For a moment, nothing moves. Then, she tried to pull away, he says, voice thin, controlled only by effort. I didn't think. It just happened. Halpern lets the silence sit for a beat before asking the only question that matters now. How did you grab her? Jason swallows. My arm around her. Just to stop her. To make her listen. To what? Jason shakes his head faintly. I don't even remember what I was saying. It was just noise. I was angry. She kept telling me to leave. The room feels smaller now, tighter, as if the air itself is being pulled inward. And then, Halpern asks. Jason's fingers flex, pressing harder into each other. She struggled, he says. Not like fighting. Just trying to get away. A pause. I held on. How long? I don't know. But Halpern knows what that means. Long enough. Jason's breathing grows, uneven now. The first real loss of control since the interrogation began. I didn't mean to hurt her, he says quickly, almost defensively. I didn't want her to leave. I didn't want it to end like that. Halpern studies him carefully, because intent in moments like these becomes something complicated, blurred between what was planned and what was done. What happened to her, Jason? The question lands heavier than the others. Final. Unavoidable. Jason's lips part, but no sound comes out at first. His eyes flicker again. Not to the detective, not to the room, but inward back to that night. She stopped moving, he says. The sentence is simple. Too simple. Halpern doesn't interrupt. She just stopped. No dramatics. No elaboration. But the meaning is clear. And in that clarity, something cold settles over the entire case. Because now, the missing person isn't missing anymore. Now it's something else. Something darker. Jason exhales shakily, running a hand over his face. I didn't know what to do, he continues. I thought maybe she passed out. Maybe she'd wake up. But she didn't, Halpern says quietly. Jason shakes his head. No. The word lands flat. Final. And then, Halpern presses. Jason hesitates again, but this time, the hesitation feels different. Not resistance. Not confusion. Fear. Not of the past. But of what comes next. I panicked, he says. I didn't plan anything. I didn't bring anything. I didn't think about what would happen after. The lack of planning matches the evidence. No tools. No preparation. No signs of forced entry. Just a moment that spiraled beyond control. What did you do with her? Halpern asks. Jason's eyes close briefly. I moved her. Where? Out the window. The same window. The entry point. Now the exit. How? Halpern asks. I carried her, Jason says. It wasn't easy. Of course it wasn't. Second floor. Cold ground below. No noise. No witnesses. And yet, someone heard something. That sound at 2:17 a.m. Did anyone see you? Halpern asks. Jason shakes his head. I don't think so. But Halpern doesn't miss the uncertainty. Because don't think isn't the same as no. What about the headlights? Halpern asks again. The car scene on the street. Jason looks up this time. And for the first time since the confession began, there's something new in his expression. Not guilt. Not fear. Something closer to confusion. I told you, he says slowly. That wasn't me. Halpern holds his gaze. And this time, he believes him. Because the reaction is different. Cleaner. Unforced. Which means one thing. There was someone else there. Not inside the house, but outside. Watching. Or waiting. The realization settles quietly, but heavily. A second presence. Unidentified. Unexplained. A detail that had lingered for decades. Now suddenly alive again. What happened after you took her outside? Halpern asks. Jason looks away again, retreating back into the part of the story he can control. I dragged her, he says, toward the side of the house. There's a fence, a gap behind it. Halpern nods slightly. He knows the property layout, reviewed it dozens of times. But this changes how he sees it. Then what? I didn't know where to go, Jason admits. I just kept moving. How far? Not far. There's woods behind the neighborhood. Search teams had covered those woods. Multiple times. Extensively. And found nothing. Where exactly? Halpern asks. Jason hesitates again. Longer. Because now, the story reaches its most fragile point. I don't remember exactly, he says. Halpern's expression doesn't change. But the room tightens. Try, he says. Jason exhales. It was dark. I was not thinking straight. I just needed to hide her. Just for a while. For a while. Halpern repeats. Jason nods. I thought I'd come back. Figure it out later. But he never did. Because time changes things. Because fear grows. Because what can be fixed in a moment becomes impossible with distance. I covered her, Jason says. With leaves. Dirt. Whatever I could find. Search teams missed it. Or, it wasn't where they looked. Did you go back? Halpern asks. Jason shakes his head slowly. No. Why not? Jason doesn't answer right away. Because the answer is simple. And devastating. Because by morning, he says quietly, it was already too late. The words hang there. Not as an excuse. Not as a justification. Just as fact. And the hoodie? Halpern asks. Jason frowns slightly. What? The gray hoodie she was wearing? Halpern clarifies. We never found it. Jason's expression shifts again, subtle, but noticeable. She wasn't wearing it when I got there, he says. Halpern leans forward slightly. You're sure? Jason nods. Yeah, she was in a t-shirt. That's it. The detail hits harder than expected. Because the hoodie was missing from the room. Documented. Confirmed. Which means someone took it. But not Jason. And if not Jason, then who? The room goes quiet again. But this time, the silence isn't just heavy. It's fractured. Because the case, just as it seemed to resolve, is opening again. New gaps. New inconsistencies. New questions. Think carefully, Halpern says. You didn't take it? No. Jason replies firmly. I didn't touch it. No hesitation. No uncertainty. And that makes it worse. Because now, there's something else in the story. Something that doesn't fit. Something that shouldn't be there. The headlights. The hoodie. The second presence. Pieces that refuse to align. Halpern leans back slowly, processing it all. Because confessions are supposed to close cases. Not complicate them. But this one is different. Jason, he says carefully, is there anything else you haven't told me? Jason hesitates. And in that hesitation, everything shifts again. Because it isn't empty. It isn't uncertainty. It's choice. A decision forming in real time. Whether to stop or to go further. His eyes lift slightly. Not fully meeting Halpern's, but not avoiding him either. There was something, he says. The words are quiet, but they land like a warning. Because whatever comes next isn't in the file, isn't in the evidence, isn't something anyone has been looking for. And that makes it dangerous. What? Halpern asks. Jason's throat tightens. I thought I saw someone. The room freezes. Completely. Where? Halpern asks, voice steady. Jason swallows. Across the street. Near the corner. The headlights. The car. The unknown. They were just there, Jason says. I didn't see a face. Just a shape. Watching. Watching. Not passing by. No случайно. Watching. Did they see you? Halpern asks. Jason's answer comes slower this time. I don't know. And that uncertainty, is worse than anything else he's said, because it means the truth isn't contained. It isn't limited to one person. One moment. One mistake. It means someone else might have known, might have seen, might have stayed silent for 22 years. And as that realization settles into the room, into the case, into everything, one thing becomes painfully clear. This wasn't just a tragedy hidden in the dark. It was something witnessed, something shared, whether willingly or not. And somewhere out there, someone else has been living with the same night, the same silence, the same secret, waiting. The room doesn't breathe after that. It tightens, because a confession is supposed to end the story. Close the file. Draw a straight line from question to answer. But this fractures it. Splits it open in a way that feels worse than not knowing at all. I thought I saw someone. Jason Miller's words linger, thin and uncertain, but impossible to ignore. Detective Mark Halpern doesn't move for a long second. Not because he's unsure, but because he understands exactly what this means. A witness, or something close to one. Someone who stood just far enough away to remain invisible, but close enough to see everything. 22 years of silence. Not just from Jason, but from someone else. Start from the beginning. Halpern says quietly. Exactly what you saw. Jason shifts in his seat, discomfort settling into his posture now in a way it hadn't before. Confession had released one kind of pressure, but this introduces another. A different kind of weight. Less about guilt, more about uncertainty. I was outside, he says, by the fence. I had just moved her. Halpern doesn't interrupt. The streetlight on the corner, it was flickering. Not bright, just enough to see shapes. What kind of shapes? Halpern asks. Jason exhales slowly. Someone standing there. The simplicity of it makes it worse. No detail, no clarity, just presence. Man? Woman? Halpern presses. I don't know. Height? Average? Maybe. Clothing? I couldn't tell. Every answer dissolves before it forms, which is exactly what fear does to memory. Were they moving? Halpern asks. Jason shakes his head. No, just standing. Watching. The word hangs unspoken, but heavy. Looking at you? Halpern asks. Jason hesitates. I think so. Not certainty, but close enough. And you did nothing? Halpern says. The question isn't accusatory. It's factual. Jason's jaw tightens. I froze. For the first time, there's something raw in his voice. Not rehearsed. Not controlled. I didn't know if they could see me clearly. I didn't know if they knew what I was doing. I just stood there. The image forms. Two figures in the dark, separated by distance, connected by something neither of them fully understands in that moment. And then, Halpern asks. They got into a car, Jason says. The detail lands fast. Sharp. What kind of car? I don't know. I couldn't see it well. Just headlights when it turned. The same headlights. The same slow movement described decades ago by the neighbor. They left. Halpern asks. Jason nods. Yeah. Fast. No. Normal. Like nothing happened. That detail cuts deeper than anything else. Because it suggests something deliberate. Controlled. Not panic. Not shock. Normal. As if what they saw wasn't enough to make them act. Halpern leans back slightly, piecing it together. A witness who didn't call the police. Didn't come forward. Didn't speak. Not then. Not later. Did you ever try to find them? Halpern asks. Jason shakes his head immediately. No. Why not? Because I didn't want them to find me. The answer is honest. Terrifyingly so. Because it means for 22 years, Jason lived with the possibility that someone else knew. and that someone else chose silence. Outside the room, the investigative team is already moving. Quietly, efficiently. A thread that had gone cold in 1998 is suddenly alive again. And this time, it has direction. The neighbor's statement. Headlights. Time window. All of it gets pulled back into focus. But Halpern isn't done here. Not yet. What about the hoodie? He asks, returning to the other inconsistency. You're certain she wasn't wearing it? Jason nods again. I'm sure. It was missing from the room, Halpern says. Documented. Confirmed. Jason frowns. I didn't take it. Halpern studies him and believes him because the denial isn't defensive. It's confused, which makes it more credible. Then someone else did, Halpern says quietly. The implication hangs between them. Jason's eyes flicker again. You think that person? He says. I think we don't know yet, Halpern replies. But we will, because now the case isn't just about what happened inside the room. It's about everything that happened after. Everything that wasn't seen. Everything that was. Let's go back, Halpern says. After the car left. What did you do? Jason exhales. I finished covering her. Same spot. Yeah. No movement. No. Halpern nods slowly. And then I went home. Ow. Same way I came. Walking. Didn't anyone see you? Jason shakes his head. I don't think so. Again, that uncertainty. A pattern now. Not lies, but gaps. And gaps are where cases live. Your clothes, Halpern says. What did you do with them? Jason hesitates. Wash them. When? That night. Immediately? Yeah. The efficiency stands out. Not planned, but instinctive. Damage control. What about injuries? Halpern asks. Scratches? Marks? Jason glances down at his arms unconsciously. Nothing serious. Nothing visible. Not that anyone noticed. Halpern makes a mental note, because unnoticed doesn't mean non-existent. And the next day, Halpern asks. Jason's expression tightens again. I went to school. Of course he did. Routine. Normalcy. The perfect cover. Did you talk to anyone about her? Halpern presses. Jason shakes his head. No. Did anyone talk to you? Everyone was talking. She was missing, and you said nothing. It isn't a question. Jason nods. No. The weight of that silence presses harder now than anything else. Not hours. Not days. Years. Why didn't you come forward? Halpern asks. Jason lets out a long breath. Because this is the question that has no good answer. I thought if I said anything, they'd know, he says. They would, Halpern replies. Jason nods. Yeah. No defense. No justification. Just acceptance. And the years after? Halpern asks. The searches. The headlines. The family. Jason's jaw tightens again. I try not to think about it. But you did. A statement. Jason nods slowly. Yeah. How often? Jason doesn't answer right away. Because the truth isn't measured in frequency. It's constant. Enough, he says finally. Enough to carry it. Enough to hide it. Enough to live with it. But not enough to escape it. Because eventually, something always brings it back. In this case, a fragment of fabric. A trace of DNA. A detail too small to matter. Until it matters more than anything. Halpern leans back again, the pieces settling into a new shape now. A clearer one, but not complete. Because two things remain unresolved. The hoodie and the witness. Two threads, separate, but possibly connected. Jason, he says, voice steady. Is there anything else about that night? Anything you haven't told me? Jason hesitates. Not as long as before, but long enough to matter. No, he says. Halpern watches him. Because this time, it doesn't feel entirely true. Not a lie, but not everything either. There's still something there. Something just out of reach. And that's the problem with the truth. It rarely comes all at once. It comes in layers, fragments, pieces that don't make sense until they're forced together. And right now, this case is still missing something. Something important. Outside, the investigation is already shifting. Old reports are being reopened. Witness lists reconstructed. Names pulled from archives that haven't been touched in years. Someone saw something. Someone left. Someone stayed silent for 22 years. But silence isn't permanent. Not anymore. Because now the story is moving again. Not just forward, but outward. Beyond the house. Beyond the woods. Beyond Jason Miller. Into the dark space where another presence stood that night. Watching, waiting, and choosing not to speak. Until now. By the time Jason Miller is escorted out of the room, the case no longer feels buried. It feels unstable. Like something that has been forced open too quickly, revealing more than anyone was prepared to handle. A confession should bring clarity. Instead, this one brings movement. Detective Mark Halpern doesn't waste time. The moment the door closes behind Jason, the room shifts from interrogation to command. Files are reopened. Old statements are pulled. Names that haven't been spoken in decades are suddenly back on whiteboards, circled, underlined, connected by lines that didn't exist before. The headlights, the car, the witness who never came forward. Find every report from that street, Halpern says. Not just neighbors. Anyone who passed through that area within a 2-hour window. Officers move fast. Digital archives replace dusty cabinets. What took weeks in 1998 now takes minutes. But speed doesn't guarantee answers. It only exposes how much was missed the first time. And it was a lot. By late afternoon, the first pattern begins to emerge. Not from new evidence, but from something old. A traffic complaint logged at 2:26 a.m. the same night Emily Carter vanished. Filed by a resident 3 blocks away. The report is brief, almost forgettable. A call about a vehicle driving unusually slow through the neighborhood. No license plate. No description beyond sedan, possibly dark-colored. At the time, it meant nothing. Now it means everything. Who made the call? Halpern asks. A name appears on the screen. Laura Whitaker. Age at the time, 34. Address, still active. She never mentioned seeing anything related to the case. Never contacted investigators. Never followed up. Just one call. Then silence. Bring her in, Halpern says. But Laura Whitaker doesn't need to be brought in. Because by the time officers reach her door, she's already waiting. The house hasn't changed much. Same siding, same narrow driveway, same porch light flickering faintly as evening sets in. But Laura Whitaker has. Time has settled into her face in quiet ways. Lines that suggest more than age. Something carried. Something held too long. She doesn't ask why they're there. She already knows. I saw the news, she says before anyone speaks. About the arrest. Halpern studies her carefully. You made a call that night, he says. About a car. Laura nods slowly. Yes. Why didn't you come forward again? A long pause. Because the answer isn't simple. I thought it didn't matter, she says finally. And then it was too late. Too late. The phrase echoes in a way that feels familiar now. Too late to speak. Too late to change anything. Or so it seemed. Tell me what you saw, Halpern says. Laura looks past him for a moment, toward the street. As if the memory is still there. Parked. Waiting. It was slow, she says. That's what I remember most. Not stopping. Not cruising. Just crawling. Time, Halpern asks. Around 2:20. Maybe a little later. Close enough. Too close to ignore. Where were you? He asks. In my living room. Couldn't sleep. I heard the engine first. What made you call it in? Laura hesitates. Because this is where the story shifts. It stopped, she says. Halpern's focus sharpens. Where? Near the corner. By the Carter house. The room feels smaller again. Because this aligns. Perfectly. And then, Halpern presses. Laura exhales slowly. The headlights turned off. Darkness. Complete. Intentional. Did you see anyone? Halpern asks. She nods. Someone got out. The second presence. Real. Confirmed. Can you describe them? He asks. Laura shakes her head. Not clearly. It was dark. They moved fast. Toward the house. Another pause. Longer this time. No, she says. Halpern's brow tightens slightly. Then where? Laura swallows. Across the street. Across. Not toward Emily's house. Not toward the window. Toward the exact place Jason said someone was standing. Watching. The alignment is too precise to ignore. What do they do? Halpern asks. They just stood there, Laura says. For a while. How long? I don't know. Maybe a minute. Maybe more. Time distorts in moments like that. Stretches. Contracts. Becomes unreliable. And then they went back to the car, she says. Turned the lights on. Drove away. Did you see their face? No. Anything distinctive? Laura hesitates again. And this time, there's something there. A detail. Small, but real. The way they moved, she says. Halpern leans in slightly. What about it? They weren't surprised. The words land quietly, but they cut deep. Explain that, he says. Laura frowns slightly, searching for something that fits. If I saw something like that, someone outside a house in the middle of the night, I'd react. I'd hesitate. I'd do something. But they didn't, Halpern says. She shakes her head. No. The implication settles slowly. Cold. Measured. That person, whoever they were, didn't just witness something unusual. They witnessed something significant and chose not to act. Why didn't you follow up? Halpern asks. Laura looks down briefly. Because nothing happened, she says. Not right then. No screams. No noise. Just a car driving away. And in the absence of obvious danger, people convince themselves nothing is wrong. It didn't feel real, she adds quietly. Not until the next day, when the headline started, when the word missing spread, when the silence became something else. And by then, Halpern asks. Laura's voice drops. I was scared of being wrong, of being involved, of being part of something too big to control. I told myself if it mattered, someone would ask, she says. No one did, because no one knew what they were looking for. Until now. Halpern steps back slightly, processing it. Because the witness isn't just confirmed. The behavior is deliberate, controlled, detached. Not panic, not shock. Something else. Something colder. Did you ever see that car again? He asks. Laura shakes her head. No. Anyone like that in the neighborhood? No. Anything else? Anything at all? Laura hesitates one last time. And then, yes. The word is quiet, but final. Halpern waits. Because this is where details matter most. The passenger side, she says. What about it? It was open before they got back in. Halpern's expression shifts slightly. Open. She nods. Just a little, like someone had been there. The implication hits instantly. Two people. Not one. Driver. Passenger. One exits. One stays. Or one leaves. One returns. Are you sure? Halpern asks. Laura nods again. Yes. No hesitation this time. Because some details, once remembered, don't fade again. Halpern exhales slowly. Because now, the case isn't just reopened. It's expanded. Jason Miller. One presence. One truth. But not the only one. There was another person there that night. Possibly two. Someone who arrived. Someone who watched. Someone who left. And said nothing. For 22 years. And as Halpern steps away from the house, the street stretching out in front of him in the fading light, one realization settles in deeper than the rest. This wasn't just a crime hidden in darkness. It was a moment shared by more than one person. A moment that could have changed everything if someone had chosen differently. But they didn't. And now, after decades of silence, that choice is finally being pulled back into the light. Because secrets don't stay buried forever. They wait. And when they surface, they bring everything with them. The name doesn't come from a database. It doesn't come from fingerprint or a license plate or a forgotten report buried in an archive. It comes from memory. And memory, especially after 22 years, is fragile, unreliable until it isn't. Laura Whitaker doesn't remember the face, but she remembers something else. The car, she says, standing in her doorway as the evening air cools around them. It wasn't new. It had a sound. Detective Mark Halpern pauses. What kind of sound? Laura frowns slightly, concentrating. A rattle. Not loud, but constant, like something loose underneath. A mechanical flaw. A detail most people ignore. But in a case like this, it's a thread. And the color? Halpern asks. Dark, she says. Blue, maybe, or black. I'm not sure. Not much, but more than nothing. And right now, more than enough. Back at the station, the room shifts again. The board fills. Lines extend. Possibilities narrow. A dark sedan. Late 90s model. Mechanical rattle. Scene at 2:20 a.m. Engine off. One person exits. Another presence across the street. Passenger side door open. Two people. Maybe more. Run vehicle records, Halpern says. Within a 1-mile radius. Late 90s sedans with reported mechanical issues. Anything involving undercarriage noise, suspension, exhaust. The request is specific. Aggressive, but necessary. Because this isn't 1998 anymore. Now, data remembers what people forget. Hours pass. Then, a hit. Not perfect, but close. Ao miano suten noze chishase kivrolet lumina. Registered 3 streets away from the Carter house in 1998. Reported twice for exhaust system complaints. Loose mounting. Rattling noise. The detail locks in. Not confirmation, but direction. Owner. Halpern asks. A name appears. Daniel Reeves. Age in 1998. 19. Address. Within walking distance of both Jason Miller's home and Emily Carter's. The triangle tightens. Too neatly. Pull everything on him, Halpern says. Daniel Reeves doesn't live there anymore. Hasn't for years. But records leave trails. Employment history. Driver's license updates. Tax filings. Eventually, a current address. 2 counties over. A small town. Quiet. Detached. The kind of place people go to disappear without actually disappearing. Halpern doesn't call ahead. He doesn't announce it. Because after what they've learned, surprises matter. Daniel answers the door on the second knock. Mid-40s now. Older, heavier, but still carrying something in his posture that doesn't quite relax. A tension that hasn't left. Even after decades. Daniel Reeves? Halpern asks. A pause. Yeah. I'm Detective Halpern. I'd like to ask you a few questions about November 1998. And there it is. The shift. Subtle, but immediate. Because some dates don't fade. Daniel steps back. Not inviting. Not refusing. Just allowing. Come in. The house is quiet. Sparse. Minimal. Not neglected. But not lived in fully either. Halpern notices it immediately. Because people who carry things tend to live around them, not inside them. You ever hear of Emily Carter? Halpern asks. Daniel nods once. Yeah. No hesitation. No confusion. She lived near you, Halpern says. I know. How well did you know her? Daniel shrugs. Didn't. Not really. The answer is familiar. Too familiar. Halpern studies him carefully. Do you remember the night she disappeared? A longer pause this time. Because now, the line has been crossed. From general to specific. Yeah, Daniel says finally. Another clean answer. No denied. No deflection. Which makes it more dangerous. Where were you that night? Halpern asks. Daniel looks down briefly, then back up. Driving. Where? Nowhere in particular. Time. Late. Vague. Careful. Controlled. The same patterns. Different person. Same structure. You own a 1996 Lumina, Halpern says. Daniel's eyes flicker. Just once. But enough. Yeah. It had a mechanical issue. A rattle. Daniel exhales quietly. Yeah. Confirmation. Without resistance. Because some details aren't worth fighting. They're too small to matter until they matter. You were seen in the neighborhood that night, Halpern says. Daniel doesn't respond. But his posture shifts slightly. A tightening. Not panic. Not yet. But awareness. I wasn't doing anything wrong, he says. Not a denial of presence. A denial of intent. Halpern leans forward slightly. That depends on what you saw. The room goes still. Because now, the truth isn't hidden behind evidence. It's sitting in front of him. Waiting. You stopped your car, Halpern continues. Turned off your lights. Got out. Daniel's jaw tightens. But he doesn't interrupt. You stood across the street, Halpern says. And you watched. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. For how long? Halpern asks. Daniel exhales slowly. Not long. First crack. Small, but real. What did you see? Halpern presses. Daniel looks away. Toward the window. Toward something that isn't there anymore. I saw someone, he says. The words mirror Jason's. But the tone is different. Less confusion. More certainty. Where? Halpern asks. By the side of the house. Closer. More precise. Doing what? Daniel hesitates. And in that hesitation, everything hangs. Because this is the moment where silence either continues or breaks. They were dragging something, he says. The room tightens instantly. Something, Halpern repeats. Daniel nods slowly. Yeah. He doesn't say it, but he doesn't have to. Because now, both perspectives align. Jason, inside, carrying. Daniel, outside, watching. Two sides of the same moment. Separated by distance. Connected by truth. Did you know it was her? Halpern asks. Daniel shakes his head. No, not then. But you knew something was wrong. A pause. Then, yeah. Why didn't you call it in? Halpern asks. The question lands harder now. Because this isn't about uncertainty. This is about choice. Daniel's expression tightens. I didn't want to get involved. The answer is immediate. Raw, honest, and damning. You saw someone dragging a body. Halpern says, voice steady. And you drove away. Daniel doesn't respond. Because there's no response that changes that. No one knew it was a body, he mutters finally. Halpern doesn't accept it. Then what did you think it was? Silence. Longer this time. Because the answer is obvious. I don't know, Daniel says. But he does. He knew. Maybe not fully. Maybe not clearly. But enough. Enough to stay. Enough to watch. Enough to remember. For 22 years. You left, Halpern says. Daniel nods. Yeah. Did you ever come forward? No. Why? Daniel exhales sharply. Because by the next day, it was everywhere. Missing girl. Police. Reporters. And I thought, if I say something now, he doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. They'd ask why you didn't say something sooner, Halpern finishes. Daniel nods. Yeah. And you were afraid. Another nod. Yeah. Fear. Not of the crime, but of consequence. Of involvement. Of being pulled into something he chose to step away from. So you stayed silent, Halpern says. Daniel looks down. Yeah. And lived with it. A pause. Then, yeah. The word lands heavier than any confession. Because it isn't about what he did. It's about what he didn't do. And sometimes, that's worse. Halpern leans back slightly, the pieces finally aligning into something solid. Jason Miller. Daniel Reeves. 2 men. 1 night. 1 crime. 1 witness. And a silence that's stretched over decades. But even now, something doesn't sit right. Something still doesn't fit. Because of one detail. The hoodie. Daniel, Halpern says carefully, when you saw Jason. Daniel's head lifts slightly. You recognized him? A pause. And then, slowly, Daniel nods. Yeah. The answer lands like a final shift. Because recognition changes everything. You knew him, Halpern says. Yeah. From where? School. Around the neighborhood. Close enough. Familiar enough. Not a stranger. Not unknown. Connected. Then why didn't you say his name? Halpern asks. Daniel's expression tightens again. Because now, there's nowhere left to hide. I wasn't sure, he says. A weak answer. He knows it. Halpern knows it. Because certainty isn't required. Not when someone is dragging a body in the dark. You were sure enough to remember him, Halpern says. Silence. And in that silence, the truth settles in fully. Not just of what happened that night, but of everything that followed. The choices, the silence, the years. And as Halpern stands, preparing to leave, one final thought presses harder than the rest. This case was never just about a disappearance. It was about presence. Who was there? Who saw? Who acted? And who didn't? Because in the end, the truth wasn't hidden. It was witnessed, ignored, and buried by more than one person. The hoodie doesn't fit. Not in the timeline. Not in the confession. Not in anything that's been said so far. And that's what keeps Detective Mark Halpern awake long after the interviews end, staring at a board filled with names, arrows, timestamps, and one missing piece that refuses to align. A gray hoodie, documented as missing from Emily Carter's room. Never recovered. Never mentioned in Jason Miller's account. Not seen by Daniel Reeves. And yet, it was there, which means someone took it, but not the person who confessed, and not the person who watched. So who? The question doesn't sit quietly. It presses, because this case has already stretched beyond its original shape. What started as a disappearance has become a confession. What felt like closure has fractured into something wider, more complex. Now it threatens to become something else entirely. Halpern reopens the original evidence logs. Every item cataloged in 1998. Every photograph. Every note. Not looking for what was found, but for what wasn't. The hoodie is listed clearly. Gray pullover. Cotton. No branding. Last seen on subject earlier evening. No recovery. No trace. But one detail stands out. A notation. Small. Easy to overlook. Bedroom window area. Fabric fibers inconsistent with bedding. Halpern freezes on it. Reads it again. And again. Inconsistent. Not matching the sheets. Not matching the curtains. Not matching anything inside the room. At the time, it meant nothing. Now, it means everything. Because the fragment that produced the DNA profile, the one that led to Jason, came from the bedsheet. But this is something else. A second fabric. A second presence. Inside the room. The realization settles slowly, but once it lands, it doesn't move. Jason wasn't alone. Not just outside. Not just witnessed. Inside. In the room. Run it again, Halpern says, handing the file to the forensic team. Every fiber. Every sample. Use current methods. I want everything separated and identified. Technology has changed. What was invisible then isn't invisible now. Hours pass. Then a result. Partial, but clear enough. Two distinct fiber types. One consistent with Jason's clothing from that era. The other, synthetic blend. Different composition. Different source. Not his. Not Emily's. Someone else. Halpern doesn't sit down when he gets the report. He stands. Stares at it. Because this changes everything. Again, a third presence. Not outside. Not just watching. Inside the room. Close enough to leave trace. Close enough to interact. Close enough to matter. Jason Miller is brought back in. This time, the room feels different. Not tense. Not controlled. Unstable. Because the story he told is no longer complete. There is someone else in the room, Halpern says, placing the report on the table. Jason's reaction is immediate. Confusion. Genuine. What? We found fibers, Halpern continues. Not yours. Not hers. Jason shakes his head quickly. No, that's not possible. Then explain it. I was alone, Jason insists. The denial comes fast. Too fast. But not defensive. Panicked. Because this isn't something he prepared for. You're sure? Halpern presses. Yes. No hesitation. No gap. Which makes it more believable. Because lies usually hesitate. This doesn't. Think carefully, Halpern says. Everything that night. Every moment. Every sound. Jason's breathing shifts again. Faster. Less controlled. There was no one else, he repeats. But now, there's doubt. Not in what he's saying. In what he remembers. Because memory, under pressure, begins to fracture. And the hoodie? Halpern asks. Jason frowns again. I told you. She wasn't wearing it. Then where did it go? I don't know. The answer is honest. Too honest. Because it offers nothing. Which means the truth is somewhere else. Halpern steps out. Because pushing further won't help. Not yet. Not until the picture is clearer. And right now, it's anything but. Daniel Reeves is next. Different room. Different energy. But the same question. The hoodie, Halpern says. Did you see it? Daniel shakes his head. No. Anything in her hands? On the ground? No. Anyone else? The question hangs, because now it matters more than ever. Daniel hesitates, just slightly. I didn't see anyone else, he says. But this time, it doesn't land clean. There's something there, something held back. Did you stay the whole time? Halpern asks. Daniel looks up. What? From when you arrived to when you left. Did you watch everything? A pause. Longer now, because this is where the gap is. I don't know, he says. Not a denial. Not confirmation. Uncertainty. When did you arrive? Halpern asks. Around 2:20. And when did you leave? Maybe 2:25. 2:30. 5 minutes. Maybe less. And in those minutes, something happened. Something outside his view. Something between moments. Could someone have been there before you? Halpern asks. Daniel's expression tightens. I guess. Or after you left? Another pause. Yeah. And there it is. The space. The gap. The window of time where something else could exist. Something unseen. Halpern returns to the board. 3 points now. Jason. Daniel. Unknown. Connected by time. But not fully overlapping. Which means one thing. There's a gap in the timeline. A blind spot. And inside that blind spot, someone moved. He replays it. Over and over. 2:17 a.m. sound. 2:20 a.m. Daniel arrives. 2:25 a.m. Daniel leaves. Jason inside before that. Jason outside after. But between those points, something doesn't add up. Because the hoodie is gone. The fibers are there. And neither man accounts for them. Which means someone else was there. Either before Jason, during, or after. And if it was during, then everything changes. Halpern pulls another file. School records. Names. Connections. People who knew both Emily and Jason. Looking for overlap. Looking for proximity. Looking for anyone who could exist in that space. Unnoticed. One name surfaces. Not flagged before. Not relevant then. But now. Different. Rachel Carter. Emily's cousin. Same age. Frequent visitor. Often stayed overnight. Sometimes unplanned. The detail clicks. Because if someone was already inside the house, they wouldn't need to enter. They wouldn't leave signs. They wouldn't be noticed. And they would know the room. The window. Everything. Halpern exhales slowly. Because this is the kind of twist that redefines everything. Not an outsider. Not a stranger. Someone already there. Watching. Hiding. Or worse. Involved. He looks back at the board. At the lines. At the gaps. At the space where the truth should be. And for the first time since the case reopened, the direction changes again. Not outward. Not toward the street. Not toward the car. Back inside. Back to the house. Back to the room. Because whatever happened that night didn't just involve the person who confessed or the person who watched. It involved someone else. Someone close. Someone silent. Someone who left behind nothing except a missing hoodie and fibers that shouldn't exist. And as that realization settles in, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. This case was never as simple as it looked. Not a disappearance. Not a single act. But something layered. Something fractured. Something shared. By more people than anyone ever imagined. And somewhere in that silence, someone else has been carrying the truth. Waiting, just like the others, for it to surface. The name doesn't sit quietly. Rachel Carter. It lingers on the board, circled in red, connected by thin lines to Emily, to the house, to the night that refuses to settle into a single version of truth. A cousin. Same age. Frequent visitor. Sometimes unannounced. Sometimes staying late. Sometimes staying overnight. The kind of presence that blends into routine so completely no one thinks to question it. Until now. Detective Mark Halpern doesn't bring her in immediately. Because this isn't a suspect you confront without preparation. This is someone who lived inside the story. Someone who might not even see themselves as part of it. And those are the hardest to read. The hardest to break. The hardest to understand. Rachel Carter answers the phone on the third ring. Her voice is steady, neutral. But when Halpern says the date, November 1998, there's a pause. Not long, but real. I remember, she says. Of course she does. Everyone does. But memory isn't the same as truth. And in this case, they've already learned how far apart those two things can be. She agrees to meet. Not at the station. At her home, 40 minutes away. A small, quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where nothing looks out of place. Nothing suggests connection to something buried for over 2 decades. But appearances, in this case, mean nothing. Rachel opens the door before Halpern knocks. Prepared. Expecting this. Which means one thing. She's been waiting. You're about Emily, she says. Not a question. A statement. Halpern nods once. I am. She steps aside. Come in. The house is warm. Organized. Lived in. But not chaotic. Everything in its place. Controlled. Halpern notices it immediately. Because control, in cases like this, matters. You found something, Rachel says as they sit. Another statement. Not a guess. Halpern studies her. We've learned more about that night. A pause. How much more? She asks. The question is careful. Measured. But underneath it, there's tension. We know Jason Miller was there, Halpern says. Rachel doesn't react. Not visibly. He confessed. Still nothing. But the silence isn't empty. It's processing. And, she asks. One word. Flat. Controlled. We also know someone else was outside. Halpern continues. A witness. A vehicle. Rachel nods slightly, as if that detail doesn't surprise her. And, Halpern adds, watching closely, we found evidence suggesting someone else may have been inside the room. That's when it happens. Small. Almost invisible. A flicker. Not shock. Not confusion. Recognition. And then, it's gone. What kind of evidence? She asks. Too quickly. Too precisely. Halpern leans forward slightly. Fibers. Not belonging to Jason. Not belonging to Emily. Silence. Rachel's fingers tighten slightly against the armrest. The first physical sign. Barely there. But enough. Do you remember being at Emily's house that night? Halpern asks. Rachel doesn't answer immediately. Because now, there's no room for vague memory. Only truth. Or something close to it. I was there earlier, she says finally. Earlier when? Evening. Around dinner. Did you stay? A pause. Then. No. The answer is clean. Too clean. Halpern doesn't move. Doesn't challenge. Just lets it sit. Did anyone else stay? He asks. Rachel shakes her head. No. Did Emily expect anyone that night? Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know. The words come slower. Less certain. Because this is where things begin to slip. You and Emily were close, Halpern says. Rachel nods. Yeah. You talked. Yes. Shared things. Another nod. Sometimes. Halpern watches her carefully. Because sometimes isn't nothing. But isn't everything either. Did she ever mention Jason Miller? He asks. Rachel's eyes shift slightly. Just for a second. Maybe, she says. Maybe. I don't remember clearly. A lie. Not obvious. Not dramatic. But present. Because memory doesn't blur like that. Not for names tied to something this big. Did she ever mention someone coming over late at night? Halpern asks. Rachel exhales slowly. No. The answer comes too fast. Too final. Which makes it fragile. Did you ever stay overnight without her parents knowing? Halpern asks. Rachel's expression tightens slightly. Why would I do that? Not an answer. A deflection. Halpern doesn't let it slide. Because you could, he says. Because you knew the house. Because no one would question it. Silence. He's getting closer. You knew her window, he continues. How it opened. How to move through it quietly. Rachel's jaw tightens. I didn't sneak in and out of my cousin's house, she says. But there's something under it. Not anger. Not offense. Something else. Fear. Then how do you explain the fibers? Halpern asks. Rachel doesn't respond. Because she can't. Not without stepping into something she's avoided for 22 years. Rachel, Halpern says quietly, we're not guessing anymore. The words hang heavy. Because they're true. We know Jason was there. We know someone else was outside. And we know, based on evidence, someone else was inside that room. Rachel looks down. Not at him. not at anything specific, just down. And in that moment, the control slips. Just enough. I didn't mean for anything to happen, she says. The sentence is quiet, but lands like impact, because it isn't denial. It isn't confusion. It's something else. Something closer to admission. Halpern doesn't interrupt, doesn't push. Because this is the opening. You were there, he says. Not a question. Rachel's breathing changes. Slower. Heavier. I came back, she says. The words barely above a whisper. When? Halpern asks. Late, she says. After midnight. Why? Rachel hesitates. Because the answer isn't simple. I forgot something, she says. Another lie. Thin. Transparent. Halpern lets it pass. For now. How did you get in? He asks. The window. Of course. Always the window. And Jason? Halpern asks. Rachel's eyes close briefly. Just for a second. He was already there. The timeline fractures again. Because now. Inside the room. At the same time. What did you see? Halpern asks. Rachel swallows. They were arguing. The moment before everything breaks. About what? I don't know. I didn't hear everything. Where were you? In the hallway. Watching. Listening. Hidden. And then. Halpern asks. Rachel's hands tremble slightly now. Not controlled anymore. Not fully. He grabbed her, she says. The same words. Different voice. Different perspective. She tried to pull away. Rachel continues. I thought he'd let go. But he didn't, Halpern says. Rachel shakes her head. No. The room feels heavier now. Because this isn't reconstruction. This is confirmation. Two versions of the same moment. Aligning. I didn't know what to do, Rachel says. The phrase echoes. But this time, it carries something else. I just stood there. Watched. Like Daniel. Different distance. Same paralysis. And when she stopped moving, Halpern asks. Rachel's voice breaks slightly. I thought she fainted. The same belief. The same denial. Shared. But from inside. Did you help him? Halpern asks. Rachel looks up. Eyes sharp now. No. Immediate. Certain. But you didn't stop him. Silence. Because that is harder to answer. I was scared, she says. The truth. Simple. Heavy. In the hoodie. Halpern asks. Rachel freezes. Completely. Because now, they're there. At the detail that doesn't fit. That's where this changes, Halpern says quietly. Rachel's breathing stops. Just for a second. Then resumes. Slower. More deliberate. I took it, she says. The words land softly. But they change everything. Because now, the missing piece isn't missing anymore. It was removed by someone who was there. Watching. Silent. Involved. Halpern doesn't move. Doesn't speak. Because the case, once fractured, has now become something else entirely. Not just a crime. Not just a witness. But a shared moment. 3 people. 1 room. 1 night. And a truth that no longer belongs to just one of them. I took it. The words land quietly, but they don't stay quiet. They ripple outward, through the room, through the case, through every version of the story that existed before this moment. Detective Mark Halpern doesn't interrupt, doesn't react, because he knows better now. Every time this case seems complete, it breaks open again. Rachel Carter sits still, shoulders slightly forward, hands clasped too tightly together. The control she walked in with is gone. Not entirely, but enough that what comes next won't be clean. Why? Halpern asks. Simple. Direct. Unavoidable. Rachel exhales slowly, eyes fixed somewhere just past him. Because I knew what it looked like, she says. The answer isn't what he expected. Explain that, Halpern says. She swallows. I saw him holding her. I saw her stop moving. I didn't know if she was dead, but I knew how it would look if someone found her like that. Halpern leans forward slightly. With him. Rachel nods once. Yeah. The implication settles immediately. This wasn't about hiding evidence randomly. This was about shaping the narrative. You were protecting him, Halpern says. Rachel's jaw tightens. No. Too fast. Too sharp. Which makes it fragile. Then who? Halpern presses. A pause. Longer this time. Because now, the truth has direction. I was protecting myself, she says. The room stills. Because that answer changes everything again. How? Halpern asks. Rachel looks down at her hands. Because I was there, she says. Because if anyone found out, I'd be part of it. I didn't stop him. I didn't call for help. I didn't do anything. The words come faster now. Not rehearsed. Not controlled. Spilling. I knew how that would look, she continues. 2 people in a room. 1 dead. 1 alive. It doesn't matter what really happened. It matters what it looks like. Halpern watches her carefully. Because she's not wrong. Perception drives everything. And the hoodie? He asks. Rachel exhales. I needed something to fix it. Fix it how? I wrapped it around her, she says. Before he moved her. The timeline shifts again. Not after. Before. You helped him? Halpern asks. Rachel shakes her head quickly. No, I didn't help him move her. I just try to make it look different. Different how? Rachel hesitates. Because this is the part she hasn't said out loud in 22 years. Like she'd been outside already, she says. The logic is cold. Calculated. But not premeditated. A decision made in seconds. With consequences that lasted decades. You staged it, Halpern says. Rachel doesn't respond. Because there's no better word for it. You wrap her in the hoodie, he continues. To change the scene. Rachel nods slowly. Yeah. And then I left. Before he moved her? Yes. Another shift. Because now, Jason wasn't alone when he carried Emily out. But he thought he was. Rachel steps out of the timeline. Just before the final act. Did he see you leave? Halpern asks. Rachel shakes her head. No. He didn't know I was there. That lands hard. Because it means Jason's version was incomplete. Not intentionally, but fundamentally. He never saw you. Halpern presses. No. And you never told anyone. No. The silence stretches. Because now, the case isn't just layered. It's fractured. Each person holding a different piece. None of them complete on their own. And the fibers, Halpern says. From your clothing. Rachel nods. I was wearing a jacket. Synthetic. Dark. The match. The second fiber. The unknown presence. Now explained. But explanation doesn't equal closure. Not here. Not in this case. Why didn't you come forward? Halpern asks. Rachel lets out a breath that sounds like it's been held for years. Because every day after that it got worse, she says. The news. The search. Her family. And I kept thinking, if I say something now, you become part of it, Halpern finishes. Rachel nods. Yeah. And you didn't want that. No. The honesty is brutal. Not because it's shocking, but because it's human. Fear. Self-preservation. Silence. The same forces that kept Daniel quiet. The same forces that kept Jason from speaking. Different roles. Same outcome. In the car. Halpern asks. Did you see it? Rachel's eyes flicker. Yes. Where? Across the street. Before or after? Before I left. The timeline tightens again. Because now, all 3 were there. At the same time. Jason. Rachel. Daniel. Different positions. Different perspectives. Same moment. What did you think? Halpern asks. Rachel shakes her head. I didn't think anything. I just needed to get out. Did you think they saw you? I didn't care. The answer is immediate. Because in that moment, survival mattered more than anything else. And after that, Halpern asks. Rachel leans back slightly, as if the memory itself is pushing her away. I went home. I didn't sleep. I didn't think. I just waited for morning. And when you heard she was missing, Rachel closes her eyes. I knew. Not suspected. Not guessed. Knew. And you said nothing. A statement. Rachel nods. Nothing. The weight of that silence settles again. Heavier now. Because it wasn't just absence. It was choice. Repeated. Every day. For years. And Jason? Halpern asks. Did you ever speak to him again? Rachel shakes her head. No. Why not? Because if I looked at him, I'd remember. The answer is simple, but it carries something deeper. Avoidance. Distance. The only way to survive something you can't undo. Halpern stands slowly, stepping back just enough to see the full picture. 3 people, 1 room, 1 moment that spiraled out of control. 1 witness outside, 2 inside, 1 action, multiple silences, and a staged detail that changed everything. But even now, something doesn't sit right, because the hoodie explains the fibers. It explains the missing item. It explains the altered scene. But it doesn't explain one thing. The sound, 2:17 a.m., the noise that started everything. The detail no one remembers clearly. The one thing that doesn't fit cleanly into any version of the story. Rachel, Halpern says, turning back slightly, when you came back that night. She looks up. What made you go back? The question hangs. Because this is the last gap, the last unknown, the reason she was there at all. Rachel's expression shifts again. Subtle, but real. I told you, she says. I forgot something. Halpern doesn't respond, doesn't challenge, just waits. Because now, he knows. That answer isn't the truth. And Rachel knows it too. The silence stretches. Long, heavy, unavoidable. Because after everything that's been said, everything that's been revealed, this is the one thing still hidden. The reason, the motive, the spark that brought her back to that house. At the exact moment, everything fell apart. And as the seconds pass, and the weight of the room presses down once more, one thing becomes clear. This story isn't finished. Not yet. Because the truth, the real truth, is still holding something back. And whatever it is, it's the piece that will change everything. The silence stretches until it stops feeling like silence. It becomes pressure. Detective Mark Halpern doesn't move. He doesn't repeat the question. He doesn't need to. Because now, after everything that's been said, every layer peeled back, every version fractured, there's only one thing left that matters. Why was she there? Not earlier. Not in general. That night. That moment. Rachel Carter keeps her eyes on him for a second longer than before. Not defiant. Not calm. Something else. Something closer to resignation. Because the truth she's been holding on to, the part she never said, not to anyone, not even to herself out loud, has nowhere left to go. I didn't forget anything, she says. The words come out flat. Final. Halpern nods once. He already knew. Then why did you go back? He asks quietly. Rachel inhales, slow and uneven, like the air itself has weight. Because of the message, she says. The room shifts again. Small detail. Massive consequence. What message? Halpern asks. Rachel looks away, toward the window beside her, where the light outside has faded into something dim and colorless. I saw it on her screen earlier that night, she says, when I was there for dinner. Halpern doesn't interrupt. Her phone lit up. She didn't notice. I did. A pause. And it was from Jason. The name lands without impact now. It's already everywhere in this case. But the context this moment reshapes it. What did it say? Halpern asks. Rachel swallows. Are you awake? The same message. The same moment Jason described. But now, it's seen from the outside. A third perspective. And that bothered you, Halpern says. Rachel doesn't answer immediately. Because the answer isn't simple. It didn't make sense, she says finally. She never mentioned him. Not like that. Not privately. A shift. Not just curiosity. Something sharper. Were you jealous? Halpern asks. Rachel's head turns back toward him. Quick. No. Too quick. Too sharp. But she doesn't push it further. Because denying it doesn't erase it. I want to know who he was, she says instead. Why he was messaging her like that. Why she didn't tell me. The truth begins to take shape. Not clean. Not noble. But real. So you went back, Halpern says. Rachel nods. Yeah. To confront her? I don't know, she says. I didn't think it through. I just needed to see. Needed. Not planned. Not rational. Driven. And when you got there? Halpern asks. Rachel exhales. The window was open, she says. Like always. A detail that now carries weight. Routine. Predictable. Vulnerable. I heard voices, she continues. Inside. Jason. Emily. Already there. Already in motion. So you didn't go in immediately, Halpern says. Rachel shakes her head. No, I stayed in the hallway. Listening. Watching. Not part of it. But not outside it either. And then you saw them, Halpern says. Rachel nods. They were arguing. Her voice tightens slightly. About what? Rachel hesitates. Because now, this is the part that matters most. About me, she says. The room stills. Not because it's loud, but because it changes everything. Explain that, Halpern says. Rachel's eyes drop again. I didn't hear everything, but I heard my name. More than once. A new fracture. A new angle. Because now, this isn't just about Jason and Emily. It's about Rachel too. What were they saying? Halpern presses. Rachel's voice lowers. Emily told him it was wrong, she says. That he shouldn't have messaged. That I would find out. The pieces begin to lock. She was trying to stop it, Halpern says. Rachel nods. Yeah. And Jason. Rachel's jaw tightens. He didn't want to stop. The tension sharpens. Because now, this isn't just a misunderstanding. It's conflict, emotion, escalation. And you heard this, Halpern says. Yes. And you stayed hidden. A pause. Then, yes. Because stepping in would mean revealing herself, becoming part of it. And she wasn't ready for that. Not then. Not ever. And then, Halpern asks. Rachel's breathing shifts again. Faster. Uneven. He grabbed her, she says. The same moment. The same action. But now, with motive layered beneath it. Not random. Not sudden. Connected. He thought she was going to tell me. Rachel says. The words land heavier than anything else. Because now, the motive shifts. Not control. Not anger. Fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of losing something that wasn't his to begin with. And you? Halpern asks. Rachel shakes her head slowly. I didn't move. Not to stop him. Not to intervene. Just. Still. Frozen. Watching something she could have changed. And didn't. And when she stopped moving, Halpern says quietly. Rachel closes her eyes briefly. I thought maybe she passed out. The same belief. Shared. False. Convenient. And devastating. But you knew it wasn't right, Halpern adds. Rachel nods. Yeah. And you still didn't act. Silence. Because that part can't be softened. I was scared, she says again. But this time, it sounds smaller. Because now, fear isn't enough. Not anymore. And that's when you took the hoodie, Halpern says. Rachel nods. I needed to change what it looked like. Because you were already part of it. Yes. The admission is complete now. No hesitation. No gaps. Just truth. And Jason never knew you were there, Halpern says. No. Not then. Rachel shakes her head. No. The layers settle. Jason, inside acting. Rachel, inside, watching. Daniel, outside, witnessing. 3 perspectives. 1 moment. None complete. Together. The truth. Or something close to it. Halpern steps back slowly. Because now, the case is no longer a mystery of what happened. It's something else. A question of why no one stopped it. Why no one spoke. Why silence lasted longer than the truth. Rachel, he says, voice steady. Do you understand what this means? She looks up at him. Tired. Worn. Yes. No resistance. No denied. Just acceptance. Because after 22 years, there's nothing left to protect. Nothing left to hide. Only consequences. And memory. Weeks later, the story breaks. Not quietly. Not gradually. It explodes. Ohio, 1998 cold case solved. DNA breakthrough stuns investigators. Headlines flood every screen, every station, every feed. A disappearance becomes a confession. A confession becomes a shared truth. 3 people. 1 night. 1 death. And decades of silence. Jason Miller is charged. Rachel Carter is charged. Daniel Reeves, not for the act, but for what he chose not to do. A witness. A silence. A decision that echoes just as loudly as anything else in the case. But even with charges filed, even with statements recorded, even with every piece laid out, something lingers. Because closure isn't the same as peace. Not here, not in a case like this. Because the truth didn't arrive clean. It came fractured, delayed, incomplete until the very end. And even now, it doesn't feel finished. The Carter house still stands. The window still faces the street. The same street where headlights once flickered in the dark. Where someone stood and watched. Where someone walked away. Where someone stayed silent. And if you stand there long enough, in the quiet, you can almost feel it. Not the moment itself, but the absence it left behind. A space where something should have been different. Where one choice, one word, one action could have changed everything, but didn't. Because in the end, this wasn't just a cold case. It was a chain of decisions. Small ones, silent ones, human ones, each one pushing the truth further away, until it had nowhere left to go but back. And when it finally returned, it didn't just reveal what happened. It revealed something harder to face. Not how she disappeared, not how she died, but how many chances there were to stop it, and how every one of them was missed. Some cases are unsolved because there are no answers. This one was solved, and somehow they made it worse.